"You, woman of the shadows," the woman cried out as she pointed a trembling finger at Adana. "Return to where you came from. You do not belong here among the living." Chinedu and Adana exchanged a quick, alarmed look. Adana's heart raced not just at the words, but at the recognition in the woman's tone. It was as if she saw through to Adana's very soul, to her darkest secrets. In the depths of the night, Adana startled awake, gasping for air as a cold sweat drenched her body. The darkness of her bedroom loomed ominously, a stark contrast to the vivid horror she had just experienced in her dream. Her heart pounded fiercely against her ribcage, echoing the terror that clung to her like a second skin. She lay there for a moment, disoriented, the remnants of her nightmare clinging to the edges of her consciousness. In her dream, she had done the unthinkable and buried Bissy alive, an act of desperation and survival that had felt all too real. The vividness of the dream, the weight of the dirt in her hands, the muffled cries of Bissy, every detail was etched into her mind with disturbing clarity. Adana swung her legs over the side of the bed, her breathing ragged as she tried to anchor herself back to reality. She walked over to the window, pulling aside the curtain to look out into the night. The quiet streets were bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, a normal sight that should have reassured her. But tonight, it did little to soothe the storm inside her. The images from her dream haunted her as she made her way to the kitchen for a glass of water. Each step seemed to echo in the silent house, a stark reminder of the solitude she felt. As she drank, her thoughts drifted to the implications of her nightmare. It was a manifestation of her guilt and fear over keeping secrets from Chinedu, fear of what might happen if her truth were ever discovered. Adana knew she couldn't ignore the warning her subconscious had screamed at her. The dream was a distorted reflection of her reality, a brutal reminder of the lengths she might go to protect her new life. It underscored a truth she had tried to avoid. Her existence was a delicate balance, and one misstep could bring everything crashing down. As the initial shock of the dream began to fade, a resolve formed within Adana. She could not let fear dictate her actions. She needed to find a way to deal with Bissy that didn't involve violence or further secrets. Chinedu had always known Adana to be a woman of secrets. There was an allure in her mystery, a depth he admired and respected. But as their wedding day approached, the secret seemed to cast a longer shadow than he had anticipated. Adana's reluctance to be photographed, her occasional distant gaze, her sudden unexplained absences, all began to add up to a puzzle that Chinedu felt compelled to solve. It started innocently enough. Chinedu decided to surprise Adana by planning a photo shoot that would capture their engagement in beautiful, candid shots. But when he presented the idea to her, her reaction was not what he expected. She panicked, her eyes wide with fear, her usual composure slipping momentarily. "No cameras," she had insisted, her tone final. Chinedu, taken aback by the intensity of her reaction, agreed reluctantly, but his curiosity was piqued. Why did she fear the camera so much? What was she hiding? These questions nagged at him, disrupting his peace. His investigation began with a simple search through her things, something he had never felt driven to do before. In a small, locked drawer in her desk, he found a collection of old letters that seemed to have no connection to the Adana he knew. The letters, written in a hurried scrawl, spoke of places and events he had never heard Adana mention. Chinedu's heart raced as he considered the possibilities. Was there another life she had not told him about? Chinedu's next step was to talk to those around Adana. He visited her salon under the guise of delivering lunch, chatting casually with her employees, fishing for any information they might unwittingly reveal. But the staff only mirrored the respect and discretion Adana herself practiced. If there were secrets, they were well guarded. Frustrated but not deterred, Chinedu turned to technology. He installed a small, unobtrusive camera in her living room, a decision that weighed heavily on his conscience. He rationalized it as a necessity for her safety, he told himself. When he reviewed the footage, however, he saw nothing unusual, just moments of her life he recognized. Adana working, Adana cooking, Adana occasionally pausing to look lost in thought or troubled. 2 weeks had drifted by with unusual calmness in Adana's life, and with each passing day, her salon buzzed a little busier, a little louder. Initially, Adana attributed the uptick in business to her latest promotional efforts and the innovative hairstyles her team had been showcasing. It wasn't until one lazy, humid afternoon that she understood the actual reason behind her salon's newfound popularity. While tidying up some of her tools after a long appointment, Adana overheard a group of market women chatting animatedly near her salon. Their topic caught her attention. It was Bissy, her competitor and adversary. "Have you heard about Bissy lately?" one woman asked, her voice a mix of concern and curiosity. "No, her shop's been shut for weeks now. What happened?" another replied, leaning in closer. The first woman shook her head, lowering her voice as if the walls themselves might overhear. "They say she's bedridden and hasn't spoken a word in days. Some say it's a stroke, but my cousin who lives next to her says it's something unnatural, maybe dark magic." Adana froze at hearing the news. It had been 2 weeks since her own chilling nightmare where she had dreamt of burying Bissy alive. The dream had been vivid and unsettlingly visceral. The words "dark magic" and "curse" echoed in Adana's ears, amplifying her fears. Was it merely a coincidence, or had her nightmare somehow crossed the ethereal boundary to influence reality? The thought was ludicrous, something out of old wives' tales, yet she couldn't dismiss it entirely given her own supernatural experiences. Determined to find some semblance of truth, Adana decided to visit Bissy. She told herself it was to assess if the rumors were true, to see if there indeed was a supernatural element at play. Arriving at Bissy's modest home, Adana was greeted by a relative who looked weary but welcomed her in. The house was dim, the air filled with the heavy scent of incense and medicine. Bissy lay on a couch in the living room, a shadow of her former self, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Seeing her one-time adversary in such a state, Adana felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. The visit, meant to satisfy her curiosity, now tugged at something deeper in her realization of the fragile thread by which they all dangled, puppeted by unseen forces. Adana approached Bissy, taking a cautious seat beside her. She reached out, touching Bissy's hand gently. "Bissy, it's Adana. I heard you were unwell and wanted to see how you were doing." She spoke softly, her voice laced with genuine concern. Bissy's eyes shifted toward her, and for a moment Adana thought she saw a flicker of recognition, or perhaps fear, within their depths. It was as if she saw a monster, but Bissy remained silent, her condition locking away any secrets she might have shared about that night. As she said her goodbye and left Bissy home, Chinedu had planned the evening to be a simple yet romantic affair. A quiet dinner at their favorite outdoor restaurant, under the soft glow of string lights, was meant to be a respite from the wedding planning chaos and the ever-looming stress that seemed to shadow Adana these days. However, as they sat sipping wine, enjoying a fleeting moment of normalcy, an unexpected interruption shattered the tranquility. A woman, her clothes tattered and her hair unkempt, approached their table. There was a wild look in her eyes, a piercing intensity that made Adana stiffen. The restaurant's other patrons gave the woman a wide berth, murmuring among themselves as she made a beeline toward Adana and Chinedu. "You, woman of the shadows," the woman cried out as she pointed a trembling finger at Adana. "Return to where you came from. You do not belong here among the living." Chinedu and Adana exchanged a quick, alarmed look. Adana's heart raced not just at the words, but at the recognition in the woman's tone. It was as if she saw through to Adana's very soul, to her darkest secrets. "Excuse me? Who are you?" Chinedu demanded, standing up to shield Adana. His voice carried a mix of protectiveness and anger. The woman's gaze did not waver, her voice rising as people started to pull out their phones, intrigued by the spectacle. "She brings doom. She treads a path paved with shadows. Return, lest you doom all who walk with you." Her words, loud and frantic, cut through the murmurs of the crowd, pinning Adana under the weight of public scrutiny. Adana felt her cheeks burn with shame and fear that this mad prophetess might actually unveil her truth to the world. Reacting more out of protective instinct than thought, Chinedu pushed the woman gently but firmly away. "Enough," he shouted. "Leave us alone." The woman stumbled back, her eyes still locked on Adana as she was restrained by a couple of restaurant staff. Despite her ragged appearance and disturbed demeanor, there was a chilling sincerity in her eyes that haunted Adana. "Come on, we're leaving," Chinedu said, his voice low and tense. He grabbed their things, his arm firmly around Adana as he guided her away from the scene, his mind racing with confusion and concern. Once they were safely in their car, the sounds of the city night rushing past them, Chinedu looked over at Adana. "Are you okay?" Her face pale, her eyes distant. Adana shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know, Chinedu," but her words, they felt personal, as if she knew. "Knew what?" Chinedu pressed, his worry deepening. The incident had shaken him too, the stark terror in the woman's proclamation too visceral to dismiss as mere madness. Adana sighed, the weight of her secrets heavier than ever. "It's nothing, my love. There are things about my past, you know." Chinedu's mind swirled with confusion and a growing dread. What secrets was Adana hiding? The drive home was tense, the silence between them thick with unasked questions and unresolved fears. As they pulled into the driveway, Chinedu realized that whatever Adana was hiding, the truth was bound to change everything. The question is, was he ready for it? A few nights after their unsettling encounter with the prophetess, the atmosphere in the home felt charged, a mixture of the mundane and the mystical. Chinedu, previously skeptical, now found himself more attuned to the oddities surrounding Adana. It was late that evening, and Adana had fallen asleep on the couch while reading. Chinedu, tiptoeing around to not wake her, paused to pick up the book that had slipped from her grasp. As he bent over, he noticed something odd, a small, leather pouch tucked beside the couch cushions. Curiosity piqued, he gently pulled it out and loosened its strings to find it filled with sand. Puzzled, he remembered the encounter with the mad prophetess and her frantic accusations. The memory of her words sent a shiver down his spine. He looked over at Adana, peaceful in sleep, yet now a mystery more profound than ever. Setting the pouch aside, Chinedu began to notice more. There was sand, fine and seemingly endless, wherever Adana spent time. It dusted the kitchen chairs, the floor around the couch, even the side of their bed where she slept. It was as if the sand followed her, a silent, gritty witness to her otherness. The following morning, while Adana prepared breakfast, Chinedu couldn't keep his discovery to himself any longer. He brought the pouch to the kitchen, holding it out to her with a confused, almost accusing gaze. "Adana, can you explain this? Why do you have a pouch of sand? And why is there sand all around where you've been?" His voice was calm, but carried an undercurrent of desperate confusion. Adana froze, a slice of bread halfway to the toaster. The pouch in Chinedu's hand was not just any sand, it was her anchor, her protection, tied to the grave she had once occupied. It was what kept her tied to the living world, a secret she had guarded closely, fearing the consequences of its revelation. "Chinedu, it's hard to explain," she stammered, her mind racing for the right words. In the heat of the moment, as Chinedu's eyes held questions that Adana wasn't ready to answer, a desperate thought crossed her mind. "Use your powers," echoed in her head. It wasn't just about discovery. It was about protection, protecting Chinedu from the dangerous truths that could unravel their lives. Adana reached out, her voice trembling as she asked for a hug. As Chinedu embraced her, she closed her eyes, concentrating on the wish to erase his recent memories of the sand pouch. A surge of energy pulsed through her, a sensation she had never felt so intensely before. When she opened her eyes, Chinedu stepped back, a blank look on his face, his previous tension gone. "What were we talking about?" Chinedu asked, looking around as if just waking from a daydream. "Nothing important," Adana replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside her. She watched him for a moment, his confusion clearing up as he shrugged and turned back to his breakfast preparations, completely oblivious to the gravity of their earlier conversation. Adana's relief was short-lived, replaced by a deep, gnawing guilt. She had just manipulated the mind of the man she loved, wiped clean a piece of his reality to protect her secrete secret that now felt more like a burden than ever. Retreating to their bedroom, Adana closed the door gently behind her and leaned against it. The tears came then, hot and uncontrollable. She wept not just for the act she had committed, but for the overwhelming realization of what her life had become, a life interspersed with supernatural crises, secrets, and now, spells that could alter the minds of those she cared about. As her sobs subsided, Adana sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing with thoughts of the future. How could she continue like this? Each day brought new fears, new risks. And now, knowing she could erase memories, what was to stop her from using this power again? Where would she draw the line? Haunted by the encounter with the prophetess and everything going on around her, Adana knew she needed guidance from someone well-versed in the supernatural, which is Mama Ugo. With a heavy heart, she made her way to the old spiritual guide's home, a place that felt both welcoming and ominous. The sun was setting as Adana arrived at the small, secluded house on the outskirts of the city. The air was filled with the scent of incense and herbs, a familiar aroma that did little to ease her anxiety. Mama Ugo greeted her at the door, her face etched with lines of wisdom and concern. "Come in, child. I can see the weight of the world on your shoulders," Mama Ugo said, leading her into the dimly lit interior. Once seated, Adana wasted no time. She narrated the recent events, her vivid nightmare of burying Bisi alive, Bisi's subsequent illness, and the unsettling confrontation with the mad prophetess, who seemed to see right through her. Mama Ugo listened intently, her eyes narrowing at the mention of the dream and the prophetess's warnings. When Adana finished, she sat in silence for a long moment, pondering the connections. "Adana, the spirits that tethered you back to this world are ancient and powerful. Their motives are complex, woven into the fabric of fate and destiny." Mama Ugo finally spoke. "Your dream of burying Bisi was no ordinary nightmare. It was a manifestation of your deeper fears, yes, but also a sign of your unresolved conflict spilling over into the spiritual realm." Adana's heart sank. "And Bisi's sickness? Is it my fault? Is there anything I can do to help her?" she asked, her voice fraught with worry. Mama Ugo shook her head slowly. "The spirits are not to be trifled with. They have plans that we cannot fully understand yet. Bisi's condition is unfortunate, but it is a direct consequence of the spiritual imbalance your presence has caused. Interfering further could worsen things, not just for Bisi but for you as well." Adana felt a chill run down her spine. The thought that she could cause harm so indirectly and unknowingly was terrifying. "What about the prophetess? She knew things about me, things no one else does. Was she sent by these spirits?" Adana pressed, desperate for answers. "It is possible," Mama Ugo conceded. "Spirits often use conduits to communicate their will. She could be a messenger, warning you to tread carefully. Your path is fraught with danger, Adana, and not just to yourself but to those around you. You must be strong, child. The road you walk is challenging but not without purpose. You were brought back for a reason, and in time that reason will reveal itself. For now, focus on maintaining balance and harmony." Mama Ugo then led her to an inner chamber. "I erased Chinedu's memory today," Adana confessed as soon as the door closed behind them. "I didn't know I could do that, and I'm scared of what else I might be capable of." Mama Ugo regarded her quietly before responding. "Yes, child, your powers are growing, and with growth comes responsibility. You stand at a threshold now. Different powers will contend for your soul, whichever you yield to determine your fate." Mama Ugo prepared a ritual designed to awaken Adana's full potential and provide her with the clarity she desperately sought. As the ritual progressed, Mama Ugo chanted in an ancient tongue, and the air around them thickened. Adana felt a surge of energy coursing through her, connecting her to the earth below and the sky above. Images flashed before her eyes, visions of her ancestors, glimpses of her past life, and shadows of a dark future. "Embrace the visions, child. Let them show you the origin." Mama Ugo's voice anchored her as the world around swirled. Adana finds herself in the quiet of her salon after hours. Surrounded by the tools of her trade, her thoughts drift back to a simpler time, before the complexities of her current life began. Adana entered a trance. Long ago, one that now seems like another lifetime before her untimely death. She was much younger, full of hope and ambition, working in Owerri where every face was familiar. On this day, an elderly woman came to her for a hairstyle. As Adana weaved the woman's hair, they spoke of dreams and aspirations. The elderly woman, wise and kind, asked Adana about her dreams. With a light heart and a hopeful smile, Adana shared her twin desires: to own a renowned salon and to find true love, lamenting her lack of familial affection and romantic connection. The woman listened intently, her eyes twinkling with a mix of melancholy and insight. "The universe listens, child," she said, "and sometimes it answers in ways we least expect." Back in the present, Adana realizes that her journey, her death, her resurrection might indeed be the universe's way of giving her a second chance to realize those whispered dreams to the elderly woman. Motivated by this reflection, Adana decides to embrace her path with newfound determination, relationship with Chinedu, seeing it as the love she had always hoped to find. On a stormy evening, as rain lashed against her windows, Mama Janet sat curled up with a tablet, scrolling aimlessly through social media to distract from the gloom outside. Her finger paused mid-scroll as she came across a post from a local blogger, a vibrant photograph of a young woman at a hair salon. Her heart stuttered. The woman's smile, the way her eyes crinkled just so, it was like looking into a past she had tried to bury. It was Adana. It had to be. Mama Janet's breath hitched, her hand trembling as she brought the tablet closer, her eyes tracing every familiar feature. The resemblance was uncanny, piercing through decades of suppressed memories and guilt. A torrent of emotions crashed over her: shock, denial, hope, and an overwhelming sense of urgency. Could it truly be her Adana, alive after all these years? The rain seemed to pound harder against her window, mirroring the chaos inside her. She zoomed in, her eyes desperately seeking any sign that this was a mistake, that it couldn't be her daughter. But every detail, the curve of her eyebrows. That night, Mama Janet paced her small living room. The image of the woman in the photograph burned into her mind. She pulled out old photo albums, flipping through them with shaky hands, comparing photos of Adana as a child with the woman in the new image. Sleep eluded her, the storm outside mirroring the storm within. Her heart was a battlefield of guilt and maternal longing. There was something hauntingly familiar about her, something more than just a resemblance. Desperate for confirmation, Mama Janet zoomed in on the image, her fingers trembling. She focused on the woman's face, searching for a definitive sign, a mark that would end her doubts. And then she saw it, barely noticeable, a small birthmark just beside the woman's chin. It was exactly like the one Adana had, a tiny, inconspicuous mark that she had kissed goodnight countless times when Adana was her child. The shock of recognition was visceral. Mama Janet gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. It was irrefutable. This was Adana, her daughter, alive. Haunted by the past visions of Adana's childhood flashed before her. Her first steps, her laughter, the day she left her behind. Each memory was a stab of regret. Why had she left? Could she ever be forgiven? The digital clock blinked late into the night, each passing hour a reminder of the time lost with her daughter. As dawn broke, the rain cleared, leaving the world outside fresh and renewed. Mama Janet, too, felt a resolve settling over her. She needed to face the consequences of her actions, to seek forgiveness, or at least to see her daughter once more. Driven by a mix of hope and dread, Mama Janet begins her quest for truth. She contacts the blogger, feigning casual interest in the hairstyle featured but probing for more information about the woman in the photo. The blogger, flattered by the interest, mentions the salon where the photo was taken, Adana's hair palace. That morning, Adana awoke to an unsettling dizziness that sent the room spinning around her. She struggled to her feet, staggering as wave after wave of nausea hit her. Confusion clouded her thoughts. This had never happened before. Her supernatural life had been fraught with peculiarities, but nothing like this. Could ghosts carry babies? She wondered silently, the idea absurd yet strangely fitting to her surreal existence. Chinedu, alarmed by her pallor and the urgency of her symptoms, insisted they go to the hospital immediately. Adana was hesitant, fearing medical scrutiny might unveil her otherworldly nature, but the intensity of her condition left no room for debate. At the hospital, the confusion only deepened. The doctors performed a series of rapid tests, their brows furrowing in bafflement. When the ultrasound technician placed the probe on her abdomen, the room fell into stunned silence. The screen displayed a fully developed baby, ready for birth. Adana, as shocked as everyone else, lay frozen on the examination table, her mind racing. "How could this be?" she murmured, her voice barely audible over the humming of the medical equipment. "I've had no symptoms, no signs." Even the doctor, a seasoned professional who thought he'd seen it all, was at a loss. "It's medically inexplicable," he admitted, reviewing the ultrasound images again. "You're 9 months pregnant, almost at term, yet you've had no prenatal care, no apparent symptoms until today. It's unprecedented." The medical team buzzed around her, their actions efficient yet filled with a palpable sense of wonder. They discussed her condition in hushed, awe-filled tones, suggesting it could be a medical miracle or something beyond their understanding. Chinedu stood by her side, his hand gripping hers tightly, his face a mask of concern and amazement. "Adana, what does this mean? How is this possible?" His voice was thick with emotion, the reality of becoming a father under such bizarre circumstances overwhelming him. Adana, still reeling, tried to process her thoughts. "I don't know, Chinedu, but it seems that life has more in store for me than just a second chance at life." Her mind raced back to the shadows, to Mama Ugo's warnings about her destiny and powers. Could this pregnancy be tied to her supernatural return? Was this child meant to be something more than just a new life? As they prepared her for an immediate, precautionary hospital stay, Adana felt a mix of fear and wonder. Adana knew she was about to embark on the most significant journey of her second life. As Adana lay confined to the hospital bed, her mind drifted, caught in the tumult of impending motherhood and the spectral forces that hovered unseen. The contractions began, sudden and fierce, wrenching her from her reverie into the stark reality of labor. The hospital room, with its beeping monitors and sterile scent, felt more like a battleground between the ethereal and the earthly. Chinedu paced the room, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a mix of confusion and concern. They were weeks away from their wedding, unprepared for the sudden twist of becoming parents. Every soothing word he offered Adana was tinged with his own inner turmoil, his face a portrait of a man caught in the whirlwind of unexpected life changes. The labor was excruciating and unusual. Adana felt as if she were being pulled in 2 directions, one towards the light of life and the other back into the shadows from which she had emerged. The medical staff worked with urgent efficiency, yet their faces occasionally betrayed their bafflement. It was as if they too sensed that this was no ordinary birth. Adana's pain was more than physical. It was metaphysical, a manifestation of her unique condition. She could feel the shadows pressing in, a chilling presence that seemed intent on reclaiming her to the darkness. Yet, there was also a force of warmth, a protective energy that fought against the encroaching cold. This battle, unseen to the eyes of the medical team, was as real to Adana as the child she was struggling to bring into the world. As the hours stretched, the storm outside seemed to mirror the turmoil within the hospital room. Lightning flashed, casting brief, stark shadows across the walls, each flicker a reminder of the supernatural aspects of her life. But with each passing hour, Adana's resolve hardened. She was determined to bring her child into the world, to give her a life unbound by the shadows that clung to her own existence. Finally, after a labor that seemed to stretch across time itself, Adana delivered a baby girl. The infant's first cry was a clarion call, a sound that seemed to banish the shadows back into the corners of the room. Adana, exhausted yet elated, held her daughter close, feeling an instant, indelible bond that she knew was forged from more than just flesh and blood. She was her defiance against the darkness, her beacon in the shadow. Chinedu, overwhelmed with emotion, watched the tender scene, tears of joy and relief streaming down his face. He had been prepared for many things in life, but holding his daughter for the first time, under such extraordinary circumstances, was not something he could have ever envisioned. It was a moment of profound transformation, a pivot on which his old life ended and a new one began. In the quiet that followed the storm, both outside and within the hospital room, the new parents gazed at their child, a symbol of their love and a sign of hope. Adana, Though still shadowed by her mysterious past and the supernatural elements of her existence, now found a new purpose. She was no longer just a woman caught between life and death. She was a mother, a guardian to a new soul who might just bridge the gap between the light and the shadows. In the wake of their daughter's unexpected arrival, the dynamics of Chinedu and Adana's life shifted dramatically. The news of the birth, under such mysterious and sudden circumstances, sent ripples of shock and joy through Chinedu's family and their wider community. The planned wedding, a day anticipated with much joy and preparation, transformed overnight into a celebration of another kinder, naming ceremony for the newborn, who they named Gift. Chinedu, still reeling from the rapid changes, called his family to share the news. The phone calls were a mixture of congratulations and stunned silence as relatives tried to grasp the sudden shift from wedding plans to a baby's welcoming. "We have been blessed with a daughter," Chinedu announced, his voice a mixture of pride and wonder. "We're naming her Gift because she has come into our lives as just that, a true gift." His parents, traditional in many ways, initially struggled with the unexpected nature of the news, but soon their tones warmed, the joy of having a grandchild settling over any initial reservations. "When can we see her?" his mother asked, her voice eager. Plans were quickly made for family members to visit, turning what would have been wedding preparations into a different, equally joyful celebration. Word of Adana's mysterious delivery spread through the market and among their friends like wildfire. Whispers filled the air, some of awe and some of incredulity, as market vendors and customers alike speculated on the nature of Gift's sudden arrival. "Did you hear about Adana? They say she didn't even know she was pregnant until she gave birth," one vendor would whisper to another. The community's confusion and curiosity knew no bounds. Some recalled the mad prophetess's words, wondering if there was more to Adana than met the eye. Despite the gossip and rumors, the overriding sentiment in the market was one of celebration. Adana, known for her kindness and skill as a hairstylist, and Chinedu, respected for his good nature, were beloved figures, and their happiness became a shared emotion among their friends and neighbors. Instead of a wedding venue, the local community hall was adorned with decorations fit for a naming ceremony. Bright fabrics hung from the walls, and beautiful flowers adorned the tables. The air buzzed with the sound of music and laughter as friends and family gathered, turning the event into a festive celebration of new life. Chinedu and Adana, holding little Gift, greeted their guests with smiles that spoke volumes of their contentment and love. The ceremony itself was a blend of traditional and modern elements, reflective of both their heritages and the unique circumstances of Gift's birth. As the elder pronounced her name, Gift, the room erupted in applause, a community united in joy and wonder at the life before them. As the celebration continued around them, Chinedu and Adana had a moment to themselves, watching their daughter cradled in the arms of family members. "It's not the path we planned, but perhaps it's the one we were meant to walk," Adana mused, watching their daughter with a mix of awe and love. Chinedu nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "Gift has brought a new light into our lives," he said, his eyes reflecting his words. "And whatever mysteries lie in how she came to us, she's ours, our family, our little miracle." A month had passed since the naming ceremony, and life had settled into a new, joyful routine for Adana and Chinedu. However, the shadows of Adana's otherworldly ties never truly faded, lingering at the edge of her newfound happiness like a reminder of a debt unpaid. One night, as Gift slept peacefully and Chinedu lay beside her, lost in dreams of mundane days, Adana found herself walking through a thick fog in her dreams. The air was heavy with whispers, shadows flickering at the periphery of her vision, murmuring that it was time for her to return. But Adana's heart, heavy with the love for her family, rebelled against the notion. She wasn't ready to leave, not now, not when she had finally found a semblance of peace and purpose. In the midst of the swirling mist, a figure materialized, a woman whose presence was as comforting as it was commanding. It was the old woman from years ago, the one who had given Adana her miraculous second chance. Recognition sparked immediately, and Adana's relief at seeing a familiar face quickly turned to desperation. Why grant me a wish only to take it away? I have a family now. I can't leave them, Adana pleaded, her voice echoing strangely in the dreamlike landscape. The old woman's smile was tinged with both warmth and sadness. Child, the gift of life I gave you was never meant to be eternal. You were granted extra time to fulfill the unmet desires of your heart, a rare gift indeed. But all things must adhere to the balance of the universe, and your time is drawing close. Adana, her desperation growing, listened as the woman explained further. When you showed me kindness, you were nearing the end of your life, a life taken too soon. That act of pure generosity touched the cosmic scales. In return, you were given a chance to experience what you missed. But like all debts, this too must be repaid. But my daughter, my husband, what will happen to them? Adana's voice cracked with emotion. They will live on, my dear. The love and strength you've given them will serve as their guide. Your daughter, Gift, she is your legacy and your light. Through her, your presence will always be felt. The woman spoke with a serene certainty that was both comforting and final. Adana felt tears streaming down her face, the realization that her time was limited sinking in. The dream shifted, the fog beginning to clear, revealing a path lit by the soft glow of the rising sun. It was beautiful, yet it led away from everything she loved. Before the dream faded, Adana made a request, her voice steady despite her sorrow. Please, let me stay until Gift's first birthday. Let me teach Chinedu how to care for her and how to tell her about me. Give me that time. In the ethereal space of her dream, Adana's plea hung in the air, thick with desperation and hope. She asked for time until her daughter Gift's first birthday to prepare her family for a life without her. Yet, the atmosphere shifted, the previous warmth of the old woman's presence cooled by the weight of cosmic laws. The old woman's face, previously empathetic, now bore a sterner expression, reflecting the unyielding nature of the universe. Adana, I understand your desire, a mother's plea for her child, but granting it would disrupt the delicate balance of life and death, she began, her voice gentle yet firm. Your life was extended against the natural order, and each moment since has been borrowed from the threads of fate. To extend further would risk greater disturbances in the cosmic balance, consequences that extend beyond your own story. Adana's heart sank with each word. The hope that had briefly flickered in her chest dimmed as she realized the gravity of the woman's words. The dream, once a place of refuge and revelation, now felt like a closing cage. But what will happen to Chinedu and Gift? Adana's voice cracked with worry. The thought of leaving her family, so soon after finding happiness, was unbearable. How can I prepare them in such a short time? The old woman's expression softened slightly, sympathy evident in her eyes. They are stronger than you know, Adana. The love and strength you've instilled in them will carry them through. Your legacy, embodied by your daughter, will guide them. Trust in the life you have built and the bonds you have formed. As the landscape of the dream began to dissolve, the old woman gave Adana a parting piece of advice. Use the time you have left wisely. Embed your love, your stories, and your courage into their hearts. While you cannot remain until Gift's first birthday, the essence of who you are will never truly leave them. With those final words, the woman faded into the receding mist of the dream, leaving Adana standing alone as the first light of dawn began to pierce the veil of her subconscious. Adana awoke with a jolt, tears still wet on her cheeks, her heart full of sorrow but also a fierce determination. The room was quiet, Chinedu still asleep beside her, and little Gift murmuring softly in her crib. The reality of her situation settled in her time was limited, and she would need to make the most of every moment. Gathering her strength, Adana rose from the bed and moved to Gift's crib. She watched her daughter, her legacy, sleeping peacefully. Each breath Gift took was a testament to the life Adana had fought so hard to give, and now, to prepare her for a future without her physical presence. The days that followed were a blend of normalcy and silent preparation. Adana took to writing letters, recording messages, and spending countless hours with Chinedu and Gift. She spoke of her love, her hopes for their future, and subtly prepared Chinedu for the responsibilities that would soon be his alone. As the inevitable drew closer, Adana embraced her family with all the strength she could muster, planting seeds of love and resilience that she hoped would bloom long after she was gone. She had been granted a second chance to make a first and lasting impression on her daughter's life, and she would not waste it. It's obvious most of you, our amazing viewers, aren't subscribed to our channel. If you are yet to subscribe, please subscribe. Thank you, and now back to the video. 3 months had passed since Adana's harrowing dream, and each day she awoke with a renewed sense of urgency and gratitude. Fully recovered now, she was determined to make the most of her time, embracing every moment as if it could be her last. With her condition stable and her spirits lifted by the joy of her little family, Adana and Chinedu decided it was time to proceed with their long-postponed wedding. This time, her attitude towards the event was transformed. She welcomed the idea of photographers and videographers, eager to capture every precious moment for posterity. Together, they chose a date that was just a few weeks away. The urgency with which they planned reflected Adana's unspoken understanding of her limited time. Every decision, from the venue to the guest list, was made swiftly and with a clear intention to create a day that would be remembered as a celebration of their love and family. Adana threw herself into the preparations with a zest that was infectious. Her usual reticence about being photographed had vanished. She arranged for the best photographers and insisted on a video documentary-style coverage of the wedding. "I want every laugh, every dance, and every tear captured," she told Chinedu, who supported her wishes wholeheartedly. They chose a beautiful outdoor venue, a lush garden that bloomed with vibrant flowers and was shaded by tall, elegant trees. It was a place that resonated with their journey, natural, beautiful, and a little wild, much like their lives together. The choice of her dress was a poignant moment for Adana. She selected a gown that was breathtakingly simple yet elegant, its fabric flowing like liquid light as she moved. "It feels like it's part of me," she said softly as she tried it on, a tear slipping down her cheek as she admired her reflection in the mirror. Chinedu, ever her rock, simply took her hand and squeezed it, his own eyes glistening. Adana also took special care in planning the details that would make the day uniquely theirs. From the music, a blend of traditional and contemporary tunesto, the food, which featured dishes from both their childhoods, everything was curated to evoke and celebrate their shared experiences and heritage. As the wedding day approached, Adana felt a compelling need to reconcile past grievances and tie up loose ends that haunted her conscience. One such unresolved issue was her relationship with Bisi, who had suffered greatly and mysteriously after Adana's unsettling dream. With a heavy heart and a sense of duty, Adana decided to visit Bisi, hoping to make peace and offer her comfort in whatever days she had left. Adana arrived at Bisi's modest home on a quiet afternoon. The air was thick with the scent of medicinal herbs and the faint murmur of a radio playing in the background. Bisi lay reclined in a propped-up hospital bed set in the living room, her eyes gazing out the window, her body still but her mind alert. Adana took a deep breath before entering, steeling herself for the confrontation. She approached Bisi, her footsteps soft against the tiled floor. "Bisi," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying the weight of years of unspoken words. "I know we've been rivals, and not everything between us has been kind or fair. But I need to talk to you about something important." Sitting beside Bisi, Adana took her hand, feeling the coolness of her skin. "I had a dream some time ago," Adana continued, her eyes fixed on their intertwined hands. "In that dream, I did something terrible to you. I buried you alive. I woke up thinking it was just a nightmare. But then, things started happening to you in real life that were too similar to my dream." Tears welled up in Bisi's eyes as she listened, her breath shallow but steady. She could not move or speak, but her expression shifted with every word Adana spoke, a testament to her understanding and the pain she felt. "I'm so sorry, Bisi. I didn't know my dream could affect reality. I didn't understand the powers I had or the consequences they could bring," Adana confessed, her own tears mirroring Bisi's. "I've come to ask for your forgiveness, not because I deserve it, but because I need you to know the truth." Adana paused, gathering the courage to make her request. "I don't have much time left," she admitted softly. "I've been given a second chance at life, but that time is coming to an end. I have a daughter now, Her name is Gift. She's the best part of me, and I'm afraid I won't be here to see her grow up." With a trembling voice, Adana looked directly into Bissie's eyes. "I want to ask you to look after her when I'm gone. It's a lot to ask, I know, especially after everything. But I believe in my heart that this can be a chance for healing for both of us." Bissie's eyes, filled with tears, conveyed a depth of emotion that her immobilized body could not. In those silent, tear-filled moments, a profound understanding passed between the two women, an acknowledgement of the pain and the shared humanity that linked their fates. Before Adana stood to leave, she squeezed Bissie's hand gently. "When all this is over, you'll heal," she whispered with conviction. "I believe the spirits will set things right. They have to." As Adana walked out of Bissie's house, she felt a burden lift slightly off her shoulders. She had made peace where it was due, and though the future was uncertain, she had laid a foundation for her daughter's protection and care. The visit wasn't just a farewell, it was an act of hope, an investment in a future Adana would likely never see, but one she could now imagine with less fear and more peace. As she drove away, the sun setting behind her, Adana felt ready to face whatever days she had left, her heart a little lighter and her path a little clearer. When the wedding day arrived, it was everything Adana had hoped for and more. The weather was perfect, with the sun casting a warm golden glow over the proceedings. Guests arrived, filling the air with laughter and chatter, enveloping the couple in a blanket of goodwill and happiness. As Adana walked down the aisle, her gaze locked with Chinedu's, and the world seemed to fall away. Here was her life, her love, her everything standing there with open arms and a smile that lit up his entire face. The ceremony was a heartfelt exchange of vows that didn't just promise eternal love, but also celebrated the journey they had taken to get to this point. The photographers clicked away, capturing not just the kiss or the typical moments, but the subtle glances, the quiet tears wiped away quickly, the laughter that bubbled up and spilled over during the speeches. Adana felt a profound sense of living fully, of being utterly present in the now, something she knew she needed to hold on to for as long as she could. As the day turned to evening and the dancing began under a canopy of stars, Adana felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She danced with Chinedu, her husband now in every sense, and watched as Gift, adorned in a little dress matching her mother's, clapped her hands in delight. "This is a day I'll always remember," Adana whispered to Chinedu as they swayed to a slow song, "no matter what comes next." Chinedu, holding her close, replied with a promise, "And it's a day that will live on, in our hearts, in our memories, and in every frame we've captured." As the guests mingled and celebrated, the arrival of a late guest went almost unnoticed. Mama Janet, Adana's mother, stepped into the venue, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She had seen the photograph, had recognized the birthmark on the chin of the woman who was unmistakably her daughter, and had traveled all this way to reclaim a lost bond. The moment she entered, a sudden chill swept through the venue, unnoticed by most but deeply felt by Adana. On the dance floor, in Chinedu's arms, Adana's heart skipped as she sensed the shift in the air. Her eyes scanned the crowd, landing on a figure that made her blood run cold, her mother. Here, after all these years, approaching with tears of joy and recognition. In the periphery of her vision, Adana noticed a flicker of shadows. The spirits, her constant silent watchers, materialized faintly in the distance. Their presence was a stark reminder of her precarious existence between two worlds. They pointed towards her, a clear signal it was time. Panic and sorrow flooded Adana as she realized the implications. The prophecy was clear. If anyone from her past life saw her now eyeball to eyeball, her existence and all memory of it would be erased. Her life, her love, her legacy would dissolve into nothingness, leaving Chinedu and Gift without even the memory of her existence. With her mother just steps away, her face alight with recognition and longing, Adana made a split-second decision. Turning to Chinedu, she pulled him close, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I love you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Thanks for giving me a chance to live. Without you, my life would have just been a fleeting shadow. You filled my days with light, my nights with dreams, and my heart with an everlasting love." Take care of gift and remember me with joy." Confused, Chinedu nodded, about to ask why she was speaking this way. But before he could speak, Adana kissed him. It was a soft, lingering kiss, a goodbye filled with all the love and despair in her heart. Before her mother could reach the dance floor, Adana felt the weight of every step her mother took towards her, each one a countdown to an unavoidable fate. Sensing the critical moment nearing, she smiled softly at Chinedu, a smile that held a lifetime of love and regret, and whispered an excuse about needing to visit the restroom. Turning, she moved through the crowd, her grace and urgency masked by a calm that belied the turmoil inside. The guests parted for her, unaware that they were witnessing her final farewell. With each step, her form became less substantial, as if the very air around her was beginning to erase her existence. Just as her mother reached the edge of the dance floor, eyes scanning for a daughter who was no more than a few breaths away from her, Adana slipped around a corner. And just like that, she vanished without a trace, leaving behind a ripple of confusion and the echo of her departure, a silent void where once there had been a vibrant life. Chinedu swayed gently to the music, lost in the moment, his mind still replaying the last touch, the last look from Adana. He was oblivious to her absence, absorbed in the afterglow of their dance. It wasn't until a gentle tap on his shoulder that he turned to face an unfamiliar woman with eyes swollen from withheld tears and a hesitancy that spoke volumes. "Hello, I'm Janet," the woman introduced herself, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Adana's mother." The words hung awkwardly between them, stirring a mix of confusion and surprise in Chinedu. Adana had never mentioned her mother, much less that she might be present on their wedding day. His brow furrowed in confusion, a slow realization dawning on him as the music became a distant murmur. "Nice to meet you, but have you seen where Adana went?" Chinedu asked, trying to keep his voice steady. His eyes scanned the crowd, seeking his bride, the uneasy feeling growing with each passing second. Janet's face fell, her hope of a reunion dissolving into worry. "I thought she was with you. I just saw her dancing here. She said she was heading to the restroom." As minutes turned into hours, Adana remained missing. The festive atmosphere of the wedding soured into anxiety and confusion. Guests began to whisper and search. The music faltered and then stopped. The celebration transformed into a search party, with friends and family calling out Adana's name, checking each corner, each shadow for the missing bride. Chinedu felt as if the ground was slipping beneath him. He remembered Adana's kiss, her intense, almost sorrowful eyes, her whispered, "I love you," laden with an emotion he couldn't place until now. The memory of her words, "Remember me with joy," echoed in his head, a haunting prelude to her inexplicable disappearance. The chaos around him grew as the venue turned upside down. Chinedu moved through the throngs of concerned guests, his heart pounding, his mind racing. Was this the secret she carried? Was this why she feared cameras? Why she held herself so carefully guarded? Finally, unable to bear the weight of confusion and worry alone, he approached Janet again, who stood by the edge of the dance floor, a picture of despair. "Please," he pleaded, "tell me everything you know about Adana. Anything helps." Janet, looking at the broken man before her, realized the gravity of what might have happened. She spoke softly, "I only just found her. After all these years, I saw a picture, and I knew it was her. I came here hoping to reconnect, but now..." Her voice cracked. The possibility that her search had ended just as quickly as it had begun was too painful to accept. As the night wore on, the search yielded no results, and the guests departed with heavy hearts and unanswered questions. Chinedu was left to ponder the mysteries of the woman he loved as he sat down broken. As the chaos of the wedding unfolded and the search for Adana turned fruitless, an unexpected miracle occurred elsewhere. Bissy, who had been bedridden and silent, began to show signs of recovery that baffled everyone around her. Her eyes, once dull and unfocused, sparkled with a newfound clarity. Strength returned to her limbs, and her voice, silent for so long, began to fill her small room with whispers and then, steadily, with words. The connection between Bissy and Adana, unknowingly forged through Adana's dream and the mystical soil from her grave, had deepened. Busy's sudden revitalization seemed to coincide directly with the moment of Adana's disappearance. It was as if the energy that had left Adana had somehow flowed into Busy, bridging the gap between life and spirit through an unseen thread. As Busy sat up in her bed for the first time in months, she felt an overwhelming sense of both relief and sadness. Her mind was flooded with visions flashes of Adana's struggles, her fears, and her final moments at the wedding. Busy saw Adana's farewell to Chinedu, her conflicted dance between staying and leaving, and her ultimate sacrifice that seemed to have triggered Busy's own healing. Feeling a duty to honor the woman who had inadvertently healed her, Busy reached out to Chinedu. With her health steadily returning, she arranged to meet him, intent on sharing everything she had experienced and seen. When they met, the atmosphere was heavy with a mix of anticipation and grief. Chinedu, still grappling with Adana's sudden disappearance and the cryptic pieces of her life, listened intently as Busy described her visions. "Busy, how do you know all this?" Chinedu asked, his voice thick with emotion. The details were too accurate, too intimate to be mere guesses. I don't know how I know," Busy admitted, her voice trembling with the weight of her newfound clarity. "It's as if when Adana left, part of her stayed with me. I saw her pain, her love for you, and her final choice. It was as if I was there, feeling everything she felt. Together, they decided to keep Adana's spirit alive through their actions and memories. Busy, now recovered, pledged to assist Chinedu with raising gift and to share the stories of her mother's bravery and the mysterious yet profound bond they all shared.